All right, hey guys. So a couple days ago, we talked about Bitcoin sort of pegging on this price of 69,000, and what we're at. I think today 67,000. Yeah, just a little above 67,000. And to me, this still just seems really weird that there are tons of pundits who have said repeatedly they think that Bitcoin is undervalued, that this is not the correct price. Yet here we are sitting at like what seems to be somewhat of a, low-ish price for Bitcoin, at least given the fact that we seem to always hit some kind of a $70,000 wall. And then this account on X has stated that there is some sort of price suppression that's happening and that Binance might be behind it. So I thought this would be a good place to start the discussion today. Um, Rusty, what are your thoughts on this? Have you been thinking about the price of Bitcoin, and does this post seem like a legitimate thing to want to think about? Like, is Binance suppressing the price of Bitcoin?
Uh, Possibly. I don't know if it's in particular to Binance, but this has been a topic that I've been thinking about lately, and one that I did go into yesterday when I was talking to somebody. Um, when the way I was thinking about it is, it gets into the thought of what's what is a lot of Bitcoin to have, and then a lot of the what is not your keys, not your crypto, and who's really looking to buy and sell Bitcoin right now. When you look around the market, I think I saw a Twitter post. I don't know how accurate it is, but they were saying that if you own in your own wallet that you have your seed phrase to a zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, that you are considered a whale nowadays. And
I saw
having
that. I saw that. That was an interesting thing. There was something interesting in what they said with it though, but go on. Like I want to dive into that one. I thought that was a cool post.
Yeah, yeah. And so I just don't know if that's considered true or if that's a real post, but a lot of people saw it, and you can say whatever you want to say to what makes a whale, but just to be able to have zero point 0.1 Bitcoin in a wallet that you control is to be able to say that you're a whale. You have all these people out there willing to say, oh, if you could only own one Bitcoin, you're set up for the rest of your life. There's a lot of Bitcoin maxis that have been saying that for a while. And it never really was that plausible when you really looked at the price of Bitcoin, the way things are going. But with the way things are going now, it is very plausible. Like when you start thinking about the Satoshis of the Bitcoin and how many decimal places it goes out behind, if you do own just zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, that could be a large amount when you're talking about 0.0000005 before you start thinking about the price of something you're going out to buy. And when you have these items that it's not your keys, it's not your crypto, you have all these ETFs going out where a lot of this money is being funneled into the Bitcoin. It's being funneled into it by people that don't own those keys. They don't own the control of that wall. They can't just turn around and sell what they're investing into, and they're investing into somebody else's um, kind of prognosis of what the market's going to do. And that they're saying that they're creating a lot of Bitcoin on Coinbase, and there's all these different theories going around on that, and how it's not really real Bitcoin numbers that are going out there. And when you think of the supply of Bitcoin and the numbers of Bitcoin that are out there, you went into it a couple of days ago, and just what is the real supply of Bitcoin? So there's going to be only 21 million ever created, but that doesn't take into account all the lost wallets, all the burned Bitcoin, all the Bitcoin that we can't track back down. And what you really think of the amount of Bitcoin that's out there, I think maybe 14 or 15 million is a good number to think of how much is actually out there, and then who actually controls that. I saw a post the other day of somebody that I follow. His name is Shibtoshi, and he said that he owns 45,000 Bitcoin. And that's individual Bitcoin. He owns 45,000 Bitcoin. And so, that's that's a big supply, I would think, and, individual people. But when you think of the entire supply of Bitcoin out there, that's not really that much Bitcoin and the control of everything. And so to be able to have the ability and the control of the power of the numbers of the Bitcoin to be able to move the market in the way that we've seen is just, I kind of see it as the kind of just stabilizing the price. And it's kind of like you were talking about the the top 500 companies, and how, when they talk about those top 500 companies, it's not real numbers. They go in there and they kind of fudge the numbers to work around what they want the outlook to be. And I kind of see that might be happening a little bit with Bitcoin, and that people that really have the power to fudge the numbers are doing it. The people that, really want to hold the Bitcoin, and they're not really trying to sell it. The average person wants to try to acquire Bitcoin. They're not really looking to sell what they have. And I think that, the people that have the large amount of Bitcoin out there, the Binances in the world, they could be, some of the people that are holding us down. And Binance has always been kind of the scapegoat with Sam Bankman-Fried and everything that was going on. Aleph used to go into this a lot, right before the fall of Binance and everything over there. They were top 500. They were on Forbes magazine. They were being touted out as the greatest thing ever. And then all of a sudden they take the downfall. Sam Bankman-Fried's the worst in the world. He has his trial. He's now in jail, and it just seems like it's a convenient scapegoat for them to continue to pin things on.
Well, I think it's kind of funny that every time somebody gets on the cover of Forbes, that like they end up in jail. I think that there's been an analysis done that if you end up on the cover of Forbes, like your probability of going to jail just goes up, like, really, really high. I don't know if it's Forbes just has a penchant for picking the people that are headed for jail, or if there's some correlation between, some sort of meteoric rise.
Grant, do you know where the Forbes fortune came from?
No.
Selling opium in China. Just like the Delano of FDR fortune came from selling opium in China, and was protected, were pirates protected by the sovereign immunity of the United States.
Somebody was telling me the other day that China cut off the opium supply back to the United States. That's why there's essentially no heroin available in the United States these days. Like, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not sure. I'm not really in the heroin market, but that's an interesting thought.
Well, I definitely know that they understand Western colonial commercialism in a different light than the story that we tell ourselves in the United States and Britain, and they understand the trade and how like authority was subverted there 150 years ago. There's a couple.
Well, hold on. Before we get off of this topic, I want to stay on Bitcoin for just a second.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I've got the little video up. I think this is the one that we were mentioning, right, Rusty? Is this how can you retire on 0.1 Bitcoin? Is this the post that you saw?
That's not the post I saw, but it probably goes along a lot with it. The one I saw was you consider a whale with 0.1 Bitcoin, but I think that number 0.1 Bitcoin is something that, a few years ago, back when I first started in crypto, 2021, I think it was 2020-ish, I hit a really big investment. I got super lucky. I was really, it's something that I'll never be able to duplicate. I'll never be able to make it happen again. But I found a coin that was at 6 cents when I invested into it. And then BitBoy got behind the coin and started promoting it. It took off and skyrocketed all the way to $6 a coin. And so I was making jokes back in the day that I was going to use my investment to buy one Bitcoin, and I wanted to buy, just one Bitcoin. And that was something special. And I remember back then, it was, if you have a whole coin, that's what you want to be in Bitcoins. You want to be a whole coiner. And that was a term that was being thrown around a lot. And now I see that it's just 0.1 of a Bitcoin. And I see that, that amount of what was considered a limit of kind of bragging or being able to brag about, or just being able to say I've hit that ability, is now come down from just a whole coin to 0.1 Bitcoin. And I see that now they're pushing that just get to 0.1 Bitcoin, and that's the place you want to get.
That's crazy. But it's also, I think that the things that we, the original question is Binance manipulating the price of Bitcoin? I think a couple of things that we do know are that Binance has interfered with the price of well, number one is it's a business model, it's raison d'etre, its
Well,
being is
well,
based
well,
on that price.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Binance has 100% like messed with various crypto markets. I mean, they definitely messed with Luna. I mean, they definitely did that, right?
And FTX. I mean, like they messed with FTX. I would uh, they they popped the bubble, and who else messes with the price of Bitcoin? And why did Binance pop the bubble of FTX? Because the United States government is one of the largest whales in Bitcoin, and that is from being the custodian of the Silk Road.
The confiscator of coins. The U.S. government is,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And that even speaks to, I mean, this is why the question of Satoshi, who actually came up with the idea, who were the group that started Bitcoin, is so very crucial. I mean, to me, like that's not a positive. Some people talk about like the anonymity of Satoshi as if that was part of the success of it. I think the slow release and the concept of mining and people being able to get their hands on those coins anonymously was more to the point of the success of it. But I think that it's equally been hamstrung. But everyone also talks about Bitcoin as digital gold. And they get that concept from the limited supply of Bitcoin. But then you begin to see a problem and we see that like holding a fiat currency or a government issued currencies, inflation, like the notion of that, we've jumped from the frying pan into the fire, I guess is one way that I look at Bitcoin. Because even like aside from the government, like exchanges like Binance, the government as being large whales, like even the notion that somebody got there 10 years before you and has a massive like unattainable bag that now you have to buy in at $70,000 is also not like very attractive to people who aren't already holding Bitcoin. And I think that's where Binance has an interest in suppressing the price and trying to again deflate this bubble, because if people are going to be using their exchange and it's going to be like sustain their business model, they're more interested in like volume of transactions, not like
Well,
go ahead.
well, to me, whenever I see price suppression, it rings of, and this might be a good segue into our next topic, is anybody who is in an upside down position would want to not see the price go up, right? Because that just increases their exposure to their incorrect bet on what the price action was going to be. So if Binance is somehow finding themselves in a position where they have sold Bitcoin that they don't have, and if there was ever a run on the bank at Binance, then that might be the kind of situation where they wouldn't want the price of Bitcoin to rise to a certain level because maybe they have some sort of short exposure and they haven't been able to rectify that. I know that there was a lot of talk that if the price of BNB went below a certain value, that there would have been a massive problem for Binance. And I think we got pretty close to it, and they were aggressively defending the price of BNB at one point, to keep it from going below that price. And I don't think it was that far off where there would have been a significant cascade that would have happened. Would have the price of BNB gone? I think it was below 300, which was at that point, and they were selling Bitcoin and buying BNB aggressively to defend that price. So it could be that there's some other kind of market dynamic going on here. Anytime you have a centralized exchange, there's a lot of, just general, do they really have what they said they have? And I think we have seen very repeatedly that centralized exchanges do not have the assets that they have claimed to have. They're pretty consistently selling things that aren't real, and just hoping that sort of there's a resolution to some of those upside down positions. But then when it becomes obvious that they really are in the wrong position, then they just declare bankruptcy, and we end up with a lot of people very upset about the fact that they don't have their coins. We saw that with Celsius. We saw that with FTX. I would not be surprised in any way to see this same situation play out with any number of centralized exchanges until we get to a point where we start to have strong controls around proof of reserves and regular audits of this kind of stuff, where the private keys associated with the assets that are claimed to be on centralized exchanges are routinely proven with digital signatures that can be, verified by very sophisticated auditors, not these, clown show that is the current auditors that, work with custodians at this point.
Well, to that, and I think maybe this is a good time to segue over to GME. But to me, this is why it's very interesting that ETFs have been opened up on Bitcoin. Like, who are the best auditors? Other traders, and the concept of opening up like derivatives to bet on with the concept of shorts is very interesting. Somebody to bet against the exchanges, to bet against the price, and I mean, especially whenever it comes to the decentralized structure of Bitcoin, like is the decentralized exchange or one that's outside of sovereign authority going to submit to an audit? So it's an interesting problem how that lack of knowledge gets reined in.
Well, and just to kind of close off the topic of BTC, we've pulled up this site a couple times, and we've talked about RSI and MACD with respect to Bitcoin. I still find it absolutely fascinating that these charts are almost identical. I mean, look at that, Lucas. I mean, if you were to overlay those two on top of each other, the RSI and the Bitcoin price chart, how are those not the same chart? Like, I look at that and I'm like, that's the exact same. That is the exact same fucking chart.
And what would you normally expect to see?
I mean, if this is exactly how it's going to play out, essentially what it tells you is it telegraphs the price action. I mean, look at this just for 1 second, right? This recent drop that we had right here. So you see how this just falls? Like, look, that's the RSI just falling. And when this thing went below this lower band, it just shot right back up. I mean, it's like almost perfectly predicting the price of Bitcoin. So, I mean, we could talk about like whether Binance is suppressing the price, but like there's also just this indicator, which is the relative strength indicator, that's saying whenever it's oversought or overbought or oversold, it's almost exactly tracking it. I honestly, I don't know, Lucas. Like I know that these things exist, and I know that they can be indicators. I know that they don't always, indicate exactly the price action. I just find it fascinating ever since I've learned about these particular indicators and knowing how they operate. I'm just still shocked that they are almost exactly predicting like the action of the Bitcoin price. And for anybody who that hasn't been exposed to this sort of information, I think it's fascinating. Like, I have not known about this. I'm not a sophisticated, stock trader like somebody like A1, and I just, this is new to me. So I just still keep pointing it out that, like, look, it tracks almost exactly. And one other thing that I thought was kind of fun, this post is kind of an old Reddit post, but it's talking about what does the world look like in the future with Bitcoin. So if you ever want a kind of a fun read on somebody's take from several years ago about what the future might look like with Bitcoin, they talk about this thing called the Citadel and how you would get access to the Citadel and how much Bitcoin you need to get into it. And I've always thought that this was kind of a funny post, but it comes up in discussions with people that I know about Bitcoin, and saying, do you have the right amount yet? Are you going to get your ticket into the Citadel? Make sure you go get your 0.1 Bitcoin or 1 Bitcoin or whatever it is that you need to get in, because otherwise you're going to be locked out. And I still find this kind of a funny post. So if you're looking for something fun to read, check out the Bitcoin time traveler post on Reddit.
Okay, I need to talk about history just a second. Forgive me, but humor me, please. Are you familiar with George Warren? He was an economic advisor to FDR.
Nope. Go for it. Tell us about it.
Well, and maybe even leading into that, I heard a lot yesterday. I listened into a couple of rooms, and there's this narrative that Nixon closed the gold window, or Nixon took the United States off gold. What Nixon actually did was admit to the country of France that demanded their dollars back in the price of gold from the United States Reserve, and Nixon.
Specie, they called it, right? Specie, that was the word.
Well, specie is a word that refers to, like what backs a currency. So specie could, you could have pewter or platinum or something held in a vault, but those are the real things that actually back a currency.
But nothing really ever backed a currency except for gold and silver, right? It was the British were on silver and the United States was on a bimetal system, right? I mean, we really haven't had a pewter-based metal system, the currency system, right?
I don't know. I just pulled out pewter.
No, I know, totally. I'm just saying, like, it's just been gold and silver. That's all I'm trying to say. Is like that's why I said specie, because I thought that was traditionally meant like it's the
well, specie is like more about like I guess like a legal word or part of a vernacular to say what has that been defined as. Because to me, I'm more like to look to taxes and say, like, and again, commodities, like, to me, those absolutely are valid in terms of specie. But saying that you have a bin full of grain and that's like backing what your financial agreements are is, I don't know. Specie is just a great word. But let's not get off. Let's not get off on that tangent. Let's just because gold is what has been sort of established since as what is backing our the dollar since 1861, 62, 63 and the National Banking Acts. And we had bimetallism leading into that, and there was an argument as to whether it should be gold or silver. That actually gets over into China and trade with the spice trade, spice road, blah blah. It's too much. That's too much. We don't have time for that. But I want to get to George Warren, because as we're talking about the price of Bitcoin, I think it's very interesting to go back to what actually happened in 1933. So anyway, but Nixon basically admitted that we did not have enough gold to go empty the vaults and give to France. And I think it's just very important to understand that it was a response to France. Oops, printed more dollars than we had gold. Sorry, we can't give you that gold, so we have to close that window. So he didn't take us off the gold standard. We were already off. Now go back to FDR and FDR in the wake of the collapse of the stock market collapse, blah blah blah. He had an economist, George Warren. Is this George Warren? Agricultural. Yep, there we go. Thank you. And here we go. Lee Quad Ahmed. What a great book. The Lords of Finance. So George Warren actually, in the weeks, months leading up to FDR's death, he said what we have here is not like because what the government had been saying about prices was, we've got to go out and we got to plow up fields, we got to kill herds of animals, we have too many things and not enough dollars for it, and the response to that is to get rid of all these things. And this agricultural economist said, no. He said, what you have is like defibrillation, fear amongst the people. And if you just get this whole like fixation on gold off, it will solve the issue. And so he would go to Roosevelt's bedside for I think it was about 2 weeks, maybe it was longer than that, and they would just pick a price. This is what the government's going to buy gold for today. And picking that price and getting that price to move and just being some random thing got the market to moving, because it gave people something to look at. So and gave something to expect with regards to what the price of that specie was. Is this making any sense?
Yeah, that's making a little bit of sense to me, Lucas. It reminds me of another post I saw where I think it was Trump was saying that the greatest thing to save the United States from a CBDC is Bitcoin. And it just goes to that kind of that narrative of if you really think into the future of where this can go, if this completely takes a complete 180 and, we start really placing value onto Bitcoin and it goes up huge amounts, just like Lucas was saying earlier, the United States owns a large amount of Bitcoin, and they own a large amount of Bitcoin because they've seized it and they've captured it. And, you know, I, I don't want to say nefarious ways, but that's always something about the government is what is conceived as being profitable at that time, and how do you get that item and control it. And if this thing really starts to get big, and I already saw that both Trump and Biden are saying, hey, I'll accept cryptocurrency on my campaign and I'm a crypto friendly president. That narrative is starting to change, and if that narrative really starts to flip where now my grandma and my dad and my all these what I would call norming people are starting to think about Bitcoin in a way of value, it can really just I think it can just switch around fast. I don't know what you guys' views on or takes on that is. That may be a weird tangent, but that's just kind of some of the things I've been thinking about lately.
Well, so I guess what I was getting at
Well,
was
but when you said, Lucas, does it make any sense? Somebody advocating for saying we have too much stuff and we should burn our excess, grain or like destroy the stuff that we've got. Uh, I would say my reaction to that is madness. I can't imagine that anybody would say that or that would make any sense. But when you said, does what I'm saying make any sense? I'm following, I'm tracking what you're saying, but some of the stuff you're saying, I know that it was said historically, and I think it's absolutely bonkers that it was ever said. It seems just
but
wildly crazy.
but we can understand that, like, that people like hold their bags. I mean, why do people both this like notion of, well, I have gold and it was worth this much before and I'm going to hold on to it until then. I guess, well, the to me the epiphany that George Warren had was an old one, but it was that if you can get people to focus on this concept of that price can change, then they stop focusing on the supplies. And it gave us this sort of like price theory of the value of the dollar as opposed to the supply of gold and the supply of goods, and the like the people who were in the middle, whether that been the bankers or the farmers who did not want to not to give anything up. And so this is, I guess what I'm getting at is, this is where like the notion of controlling the price. We talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and how it's as manipulated as the S&P. So you make these like sort of false metrics, and you get people to focus on these false metrics, and then you can control the price through that. And I think this is also where the Bitcoin and the limited number of Bitcoin has been so very phenomenal in giving us a measuring stick to begin to understand and to refocus on supply rather than like price theory of value. So anyway, that's why I wanted to bring up that sort of instance of history. But let's talk about GME, because unless you have questions or want to talk more about I don't know, price theory versus supply theory, blah blah blah.
No, let's talk about GameStop. It's a good segue. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
So what is happening in GameStop? I assume that you've been keeping an eye on it. Uh, I have. I have. I watched Roaring Kitty's. I watched Roaring Kitty's video feed. I thought it very interesting how he did not start on time because he thought that some of those people who had shorted the position were going to dump, to give the perception that that he was wrong. I don't know. Did you follow any of that and believe or give credence to that?
Well, I thought it was interesting that I think there was a couple things that were happening. First off, the world was watching, right? I think there were some numbers said that 600,000 people watched the
600,000 on YouTube alone, like not counting the restreams everywhere else. We had what 33,000 on FOMO Unchained with Aleph and CK. We had 33,000 watching with us on X alone too. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So the entire world was sort of watching with bated breath. And I think part of the narrative going into that live stream was this guy is manipulating the price. He's behind all of this and, like looking to pin it on him as the fall guy. And I think masterfully played, right? First off, he delays it by 30 minutes. And that means that sort of everybody has to keep, paying attention and waiting and whatever. If he'd have just started on time, that wouldn't have occurred. And I think it also threw off some of the timing. Like, if the whole world's gonna watch, showing up late and then looking like an absolute doofus, right? Just puts a nail in the coffin that this guy is some sort of master manipulator, right? He comes out here and says, I don't have any plan. I just like the stock. Like, it's like, okay, that shuts down like, all of this pressure that was on him. And so he comes out late, trolls all these media outlets. I mean, if you look at the looks on the faces of these people that are trying to seriously cover this, and here's this guy showing up and he's like wearing a costume and like looking like a complete moron. Like that just, was just so well played. And then there's a lot that like happens in the video itself, right? Because there are there have been things said about algorithmic manipulation of the price, and so some of the things that he's doing is he's saying we're going to end the stream, and then it starts tanking or whatever, and then he says look at the price, and then saying here's my E-Trade account and this is real, and he brings it up in real time so that it shut down a lot of the discussions that like his positions weren't real or that he was faking it in some way, and that he was specifically calling out E-Trade. There's a lot of nuance in what he's saying during the entire stream that if you go through and you really start picking apart some of the things that he presented or that he tried to say, I think it was an attempt to really speak to some of the stuff that was happening, especially into the lead up of the live stream, because prior to that he hadn't said anything, and so there was a lot of outlets that were trying to pin him as this ringleader that was pushing all of this retail buying frenzy. And to me that never made any sense. Like I see the amount of volume that's happening on GME, and there's no way in hell this is retail buying this, like, because if you think about how most retail investors can buy a stock, right? There's a thing called pattern day trading. And so if you don't have like at least a $25,000 valuation to your stock trading account, if you are repeatedly making trades, you start getting strikes against PDT. And that means that your account can be forcefully closed and your trading can be suspended if you start getting too many pattern day trader strikes. So I think I've seen certain numbers that say, most people have less than $1,000 in savings and some of this other stuff. So to think that, we can drive something like 200 million, trades in GME, and that's all retail, that just to me seems like the most ludicrous thing that has ever been presented. So yeah, I think that the live stream was very, very interesting, and I think that there's a lot of nuanced stuff that was in there, even though it looked like this just troll clown show.
Well, I think he was absolutely brilliant, and obviously, uh, I think you nailed on the head exactly his motives and what he was trying to accomplish, which he did. Like also at the end of the show, like I'm going to end it now. I'm going to end it now. I'm going to end it now, and we'd see the price bump up. So fast forward, Citron has declared that they're backing out of their short positions. Um, GME has $4 billion in cash to survive whatever happens in the future. What do you think? What do you think about the situation now?
So yeah, a couple of interesting things that have happened over the last few days. So the first one is GameStop issued 45 million shares, announced that they completed the sell of the 45 million. Then they announced a second one where they said they were going to sell another 75 million shares, and they announced that they completed that sale as well. So at this point, GameStop is now sitting on something like $4.1 billion in cash. Just sitting on their balance sheet, $4.1 billion in cash. And they, according to the amended, charter for the company, they have the ability to invest that money in any way they see fit, according to the rules that were established of whatever monies that were in GameStop, including a $100 million allocation to stock buybacks. So if GME decides that the price goes too low, they can buy more shares, but that they can also take that cash that they've got and invest it. So as you said, there was a very large institution that opened a short position. So Andrew left from Citron Research, said, "Hey, we're going to short this stock. Like, this stock is still going to zero. We want to take up a short position on it." And Citron had to capitulate recently. They said, there is no short thesis that makes any sense. We got to get out of this trade. And they announced that they were no longer short. Now, there's been speculation that Citron did not properly exit their short position. And there are indications that that this still is the case. And I think that this post here was an interesting one that I saw, that's saying that we're actually in a position where there are a significant number of fail to delivers that are being recorded recently. So, Lucas, are you familiar with FTDs in the stock market? Is this making sense? Should I go and talk about failed to delivers a little bit?
Yeah, talk about failed to delivers.
Okay, so a failed to deliver is we moved, and we talked about this, right? Where when we were discussing stocks and how stocks might move to crypto settlement, right? Like having instantaneous finality. That is one of the things that blockchains really bring to the table, is that when you and I trade something, we don't have to wait for you to sort of go deliver it to a custodian and make sure that like the money is there and the thing that I said is there. Like, we can have an exchange of goods and we can have immediate finality. You and I can settle a trade and we can be assured that both parties that had something that wanted to exchange them walk away with what they're supposed to have. Crypto enables that. And it is one of the really powerful things about how blockchains and crypto-based assets works. Like, that immediate finality is super, super critical and super important. So if we move to a stock-based mechanism for that, it would be super interesting, because something like what we're about to discuss could not occur. So what is a fail to deliver? A fail to deliver is when we decide to make an exchange, right? So you have some money and you say, I want some shares of GameStop. And I say, sure, I'll sell you some shares of GameStop. And then I take your money, and then I'm supposed to deliver the shares according to the old rules 2 days from now. So in 2 days, we're supposed to get all of this sorted out. So you're supposed to get your shares of GameStop and I'm supposed to get my money. That was revised to T+1, which means that they shortened the window. So instead of having 2 days to settle something, they said you only have 1 day to settle it. So what a fail to deliver is when you give me the money and I don't give you the shares. I failed to deliver the shares. So I have your money, but you don't have the shares. And so this post is saying that there are a significant number of failed to delivers, not like a small amount of failed to delivers, but like a lot of failed to delivers. So that's an interesting situation that if you kind of look at a couple of things that I threw on the screen, this guy is saying that there is significant action with the existing calls that are out there, and then this one is saying that there's action around failed to delivers that has been very significant over the most recent period of time here, and that's it's not that big of a window there. So that's one of the things he's saying, is that we still have a situation that is developing and getting worse for some people. So whether Citron Research really exited their position, they definitely said that they did, but we're not seeing the same kind of evidence like Roaring Kitty presented, where they go into their account and show us it in real time and then show us updating. Like, that's not what's happening. They're just going on TV or just going on X and saying, hey, we're out, but who knows if they really are. It's hard to really believe, what a major institution is saying like that, when a lot of times they aren't being truthful about what they're really doing.
Well, and maybe to come full circle to what we were talking about with Bitcoin, I think what we're talking about here is the misbehavior, the abuses of whales, and the whales here, or the and part of the like the narrative of GME, which is part is so interesting, is hedge funds and private equity groups, or leverage buyouts. Um, and which has also made me very like interested in the FOMC board released their numbers regarding what price inflation is right now, and what the interest rate is on borrowing from the Federal Reserve, and those are all correlated. Like what are private equity groups? They used to be called leverage buyout organizations. I think we track them back. I haven't really dug into this, but the Small Business Act, I'm always amazed with, because when people on the street talk about small businesses, in their mind, they're talking about counting the number of employees. But when you go to Congress and you write a law about businesses, they talk about the number of owners. And so where I think like politically we would have rather like given privilege to like these concept of mom and pop stores, and in our mind that's the like a small business on Main Street in a small town, or whatever, a local business. In reality, what we did was privilege businesses with a small number of owners, and those, I mean, again, think in terms of Bitcoin, like uh, if you own 46,000 Bitcoin, boy, you can do some things that somebody who owns 45 Satoshis can't do. And that's what I think we see here, winnowed out. And fast forward to like what Roaring Kitty and Wall Street Bets on Reddit have done is noble in trying to expose the unaligned interests of investors, like this notion of making money on shorts, and not having a true interest in what good a company is bringing into the world. Yeah, that's a great and noble cause, but like, why isn't the system taking care of it? And when I say like, why isn't the system taking care of it, I look at the interest rate on borrowing money. Like, what would have happened if we were still at 0% interest rates, and Citron and some of these companies who short could have just gone and borrowed more money at 0% interest? Would they have had to have exited? I don't think so. And how would they behave if that?
I agree that low interest rates absolutely distort the market, because it allows for the people who have access to cash in very interesting ways to do stuff that is irrational and destructive in markets that are operating under normal, sort of situations where there is a real cost to money, and you can't just do things that zero interest rates allow you to do. So I 100% agree with you. But let's stay on GME for just a second, because I think there's some other stuff to unpack here. So let's go back to this options thing, right? So Roaring Kitty presented his position, and he had 120,000 open call options for an expiry that's happening next Friday. So other interesting news on GameStop is GameStop has its annual shareholders meeting today. So everybody's sort of waiting to hear Ryan Cohen speak. He's the CEO, chairman of the board, and he's going to say something tonight. A lot of people think it's going to be not that interesting, but some people are saying, well, we could get something interesting from Ryan tonight. But the call options that are expiring next Friday, something needs to happen with those. Like, either Roaring Kitty is going to he's either going to exercise his calls, and that means that he will then be taking delivery of the shares ostensibly, or he might be doing something interesting else. And so this post is discussing some of this, like, is he sort of selling half of these call options and then using the money from those call options to exercise the rest of them and take delivery of the shares? This post was kind of an interesting one. So this said that so this Peruvian bull guy, I think, who was talking about this, or maybe it was another person that was speaking here. He was talking about a way that you can actually exercise these calls and not have the cash, and that you can just go to the bank and say, hey, loan me the money so that I can go do this, and then we'll buy some puts that will protect your downside, and then would allow him to exercise all of his call options. So this one's kind of an interesting one to check out and see if you think that this might be a way that he might resolve the situation. But we're expecting to see some sort of a action and on his position, because he hasn't posted in a few days. So those open call options, definitely he needs to do something with them in the short term. And so he's got to do something in at least in the next week.
Okay, well, so very interesting. So next Friday, we're going to see something happen with GME, right?
Well, he probably wouldn't wait till the last minute unless he's just going to exercise those calls. So the way that call options work is if they expire in the money, most brokerages will do something called automatic exercise. And so that means that if you have a call and it's in the money, then they will automatically exercise your call. And then that means that you're going to be delivered that amount of shares. But it also means you need to have that amount of money, right? So if you have a call for 100 shares and your strike price is $18, then you got to come up with $1,800 to exercise that call, because you have the right to purchase. And so automatic exercising means that they're going to exercise that call, but then you have to come up with the money to actually pay for those shares. Now, if that share price is lower, then you could just turn around and sell some of those shares and make a profit, but you still do need to have the money to exercise the call. So that's where, if you look at his position, he doesn't have enough cash to exercise to buy 12 million shares. He'd need $240 million at his $20 call price. So he doesn't have that kind of cash. So he's got to do something slightly different. And that's where this post said that there's something slightly more sophisticated that he could do. One of which might be to roll his options, sell half of them, or to go partner up with a bank that wants to help, unwind this situation for him. Especially if he's extremely bullish on the stock and wants to own a lot of the shares.
Or there's always GoFundMe. Very, very interesting. So let me know what you see happening here, because we are at the arc of the I don't know, the excitement before the denouement of GME, or perhaps it'll be pushed off again. Rusty, any thoughts about GME?
Nothing more than what's already been discussed. I think it'll be interesting to see how long it's going to be until they come out with the Dumb Money 2 movie. I think it's a really good story, and it makes for a good telling on what's happened with the Roaring Kitty. And I'd never really saw too much about it when it was first happening. I was kind of out of the loop of what was going on. But after trying to go back and research it and watch the movie, Roaring Kitty and the GME kind of started a lot of, I would think, that mindset of meme coins, and that mindset of, oh, you can just flip and become a millionaire, and hodl and diamond hands and all the words that we try to use for everything nowadays. Like, you can create a cryptocurrency today. There's 300, I think, created in an hour on Solana. I think there was a stat or something like that thrown out there. You can go create a cryptocurrency, and automatically everybody's going to want to hodl, and everybody's going to want to be diamond hands, and everybody's got the community, and a lot of these terms that kind of originated with Warren Kitty have kind of followed over and just become kind of the norm. And I think that, it's interesting when he comes and does these live streams that he gets so many views, and he kind of plays it the right way. His memes are really good. He says, I'm the one creating these memes. Don't you think anybody else doing it, but it's me. I'm the one doing these memes. He has little videos in the beginning and in the end of it, just a couple kitty, like little cute kitty videos. Like, he's really playing it in a different way. And He's shown that he's very successful at it, and I think that it's going to continue to play out and be successful. And like I said, the little joke of Dumb Money 2 movie, I think they are going to have to come up with a part 2 of what he's doing right now and how this plays out.
Well, if Ben Mesrick is listening, please come on and tell us what you think.
So last two things I want to mention about GME, and I know you got like a couple things you wanted to mention before we close this out, Lucas. So this is another thing that I saw that was kind of interesting. That there's still call action, so a lot of calls are still being purchased. These are starting to get to be very popular. So call options with strike prices at 30, 35, 50. 100, 125. There's a lot of action happening here. This post was talking about it. And then one other one that I want to point out that was really interesting. It seems like a lot of what's happening on X right now is people just taking screenshots of Reddit and then just reposting. It's obviously there's interesting things being said on Reddit, but this one was really interesting. Is that apparently the one who is selling these call options is a place called Wolverine Trading, and interestingly enough, they're talking about this that these call options that were sold to Roaring Kitty, that they didn't do any hedging of this. That they said that that they reported owning no shares of GME, and maybe they've got this wrong and they're not reading this right, but it was interesting because in all of those memes that Roaring Kitty posted, I think one of them, if I recall correctly, and I think it's even alluded to in this post, is that they show this part of the movie of the X-Men, and it's one where Wolverine is sort of being turned into or Logan is being turned into the Wolverine, the X-Man, whatever. He's being infused with the adamantium, and he has his claws, and he's not really wearing a lot of clothes, and he's the naked Wolverine, which some people said alluded to this situation, is that these calls were sold and that they didn't do any hedging of these calls. And so, if they think that he's just going to exercise it and take the cash, then they wouldn't need to do it. But if he ends up wanting some amount of these shares and Wolverine doesn't have the shares, then they may have to go out on the open market and get them at whatever price they have to get them at.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, well, we're rolling in on the end of the hour. I did want to bring up Argentina because we are seeing riots in Argentina. Or I noticed on X yesterday there are riots in Argentina, and I've thought what Javier Milei is up to down there is very interesting. Maybe in regards to the conversation today, here are the things that I find very interesting and that I've wanted to I don't know, parse out in the narrative of Argentina. I don't think we include there have been discussions about Javier Milei like held up a chainsaw in his campaign, and I believe he was elected in December of last year, and said he was going to, cut all of these federal spending, cut all this government spending, et cetera, et cetera. Well and good, and it seems that he did that. And now we are seeing some cuts to social programs. He said that he doesn't care if people starve; he's going to let them starve, and their neighbors or the private sector is going to have to figure that out. Well, that might be coming to a head. But part of what I think is also more interesting in or deeper into the narrative. Number one, like we talk about the interest rates in the Federal Reserve at 5%, of the European Central Bank at 3%, something. In January, the Central Bank of Argentina's interest rate was at 133%. And then was cut to 80%, to 70%, 60, 50, and is now at 40%. So still orders of magnitude more than what you see in the United States. And so I think it's very interesting to make those comparisons, but also to go back into the financial like sovereign debt history of Argentina. There was a a hedge fund that loaned Argentina. I don't know how much money they loaned them, but in 2016 they got a settlement of and this is Elliott Capital Management or Elliott Investment Management, if you want to bring it up. But in 2016 and leading into that, like from, I don't know, 2008 for 10 years or so, they had a fight in which they tried to extract the amount of dollars that they were promised from Argentina. And they got, I believe, $2 billion from Argentina. So, and also interesting in that timeline is the amount of money that the World Bank has invested in Argentina or loaned Argentina through the International Monetary Fund. And like the narrative is that Argentina is Javier Milei is an anarcho-capitalist, an economist. I don't know what, but it seems to me he's more concerned with I don't know, like the commercial prospects of Argentina more so than taking care of the people in the country, and how is that going to play out with him? So, and I say that with an eye towards there are those who say that the sentiment of the country is that he's doing right, but as more people are affected by his austerity, I wonder how long that's going to hold. So I don't know. Keep an eye on Argentina and what's going on down there.
Did you say that there's rioting in Argentina? I think that was something else that you mentioned. Is that
absolutely rioting in the Plaza Mayor and at the Pink House? I saw videos of it yesterday. If you pull it up on X, you can see some of the rioting going on there. And like Argentina too. Buenos Aires, I think, has 9 million people. I don't know what the full population, but by and large, the majority of the population in Argentina does live in Buenos Aires. There's only a couple of there. Rosario is a large city too. A couple more, but the majority of the population lives right there in the capital. So, something else because I don't have anything to add with what's going on there. I just think
if I got the right one, does that seem to
that's it. So the police are using, there's the water cannons, got the old water cannons out. Everybody check out our issue on water a couple of days ago. Sorry, I couldn't resist. The last thing, because we are rolling up on the hour, the last thing that again, I don't have anything to add in Argentina. Grant, to Chia, did you happen to see that Aleph added an on-ramp and an off-ramp on XEH on his THND swap?
I didn't, but we should definitely talk more about that since we're just like at the last minute. But no, I knew he was talking about doing it. I knew that was planned. That he's sort of become a pretty big fan of Chia. Waiting for interesting things to happen with Chia. But I think given what we talked about yesterday, I think we're seeing that there are a lot of people that are going to get pretty excited about it, given the fact that the whole ecosystem is sort of blossoming as a whole, and now really interesting things can start to happen. So I knew that he liked Lisp, and I know that we've sort of been talking about it a lot, and he's sort of a fan of Chia. But no, I hadn't seen that they actually got that live on the swap or whatever. Is that what you're talking about? They got the swaps going?
Yeah, they got the swap going. So and I used it the other day. I swapped Chia for Ethereum after, like, I had some Sol I swapped into Chia, and then I swapped it out for Ethereum. So it worked beautifully. And so bravo to Aleph. I know he is a busy dev and et cetera, but I do love that he's so particular, and when you give him long enough and he wants something, he doesn't wait for it. So many of the Chia community members do that.
Well, maybe we're due for a show where we talk a little bit about some on ramps and off ramps, and how some of this stuff works. Like maybe we can do a little bit of coverage of that on one of the shows coming up.
Well, I didn't know what all that it entailed for building that swap mechanism. I didn't want to press him for it. I merely said thank you, thank you, thank you, and was glad that I mean, yeah, like now I can move more easily, so that's what I care about.
Well, I guess the real question is, why would you be swapping Chia for ETH? Were you trying to go buy a THND coin or something?
Well,
Like, why did you need some ETH?
yeah, I mean, THND, they had some people G'd out, which I also, I just like, like my backroom advice was, I was like, the THND auto trader is a phenomenal tool. You have some people who are making some short-sighted decisions, and Rusty, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying all this, but you have some people who are making some short-sighted decisions and are sort of prima donnas. And I said, you shouldn't really worry about the price of the token. You should be focused on marketing and getting like more people to be using that bot, because it is fabulous if people are going to be engaged in the world of meme coins, especially on Solana, where there's 3, 4, 5, 600 of them an hour. Unbelievable. And they last they last like snowflakes in July. So I don't know. But anyway, THND was a low price, and I had extra XCH that I'm not seeing a lot of NFTs and projects going on Chia right now. So I used crypto is so easy to move money around sometimes. So that's what I did anyway. Great conversation today. I enjoyed it. Bitcoin, GME, Argentina. What else did we start? Did we get something else in there?
Talked a little bit about your financial advisor to FDR.
Oh, George Warren. God bless George Warren. And everybody go out and read The Lords of Finance by Lee Ahmed. There's also a book that I don't know if I've ever mentioned to you, Grant, that I think is phenomenal for understanding some of the changes that FDR made, and that is The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan. And he gets into sort of like the notion of crop insurance and how they got away from this idea of controlling the supply of crops and whatnot by going out and plowing them up and killing flocks of chickens and destroying eggs and destroying all these things, and instead began to use crop insurance so that they could create money in the future and pay farmers different things for different like we'll give you so much if you plant corn, we'll give you so much if you plant barley. And that's how they began to structure what the agricultural sector looked like.
We might have to get our book list going along with the aggregate of all the shows that we've done, because there's a lot of books that get mentioned on this show. So if you're an avid reader, here's the one that got mentioned here, The Worst Hard Time. But I think we got to wrap this because we're at end of time, right?
Yep. I got to get. Thank you so much. Enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.